Okay, thank you. So this is a brief table of content of what we are going through. First of all, is the definition of what is the operational technology, because it's normally not a so well accustomed concept probably, and which are the differences between the IT, the information technology, and the OT. And also, why we are talking about the IoT integration now and why it is becoming worrisome, especially after the surge of COVID that changed, as in many other sectors, let's say, shuffled the cards, as in many other sectors. And which are the cybersecurity, which is the cybersecurity in this area especially, because it has special threats, the problem is very peculiar, and therefore it asks for a specific, let's say, cybersecurity model that is what I call the cyber terrain model. Well, the term is not invented by me, but it's something that fits very well in this topic. So first of all, Gartner defines the operational technology as the set of hardware and software that detects and causes a change through the direct mounting and control of industrial equipment, assets, processes, and events. So they are called also in some other, let's say, in literature, they are also called cyber physical systems, but the cyber physical systems are just one portion of the operational technology, because operational technology includes also, for example, things like the industrial PCs, robotics, industrial IoT, everything that stays in the production floor, essentially. So the difference between IT and OT in terms of functionality and culture are different, because functionality, of course, because the set of technologies that are specific for their OT context are several. We have different types of protocols that are only and merely used in the industrial sector. And also because we have different cultures. Normally in a company, in a manufacturing company, the IT and OT teams are completely separated each other, and often they are not even speaking the same language in terms of technicalities and jargon, for example. But at the same time, it's one of the most rapidly increasing area of cybercrime. Just before the surge of COVID, IBM X-Force released a trade intelligence index that was reporting an increment of 2,000% of the threats of the attacks to the OT infrastructures compared to the previous year. So it is an extremely incrementing area of security. And this is the reason why we are talking about cybersecurity in the OT context, but also mostly in the convergence of these two worlds, because as we will see in a moment, the OT is not something that lives alone on its own systems, but it's something that is incrementally integrated inside the IT part of an industry. So which are the differences, especially between the two worlds? There is, first of all, I think that is at the roots of all the things that I'm going to say in the following slides. First of all, the IT security, as mostly probably anyone knows, is based essentially on the triad of these three terms: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. While on the other hand, OT security is mainly based on three other words: that is safety, reliability, and productivity. So in terms of data, this will bring again to the availability of data, to the integrity and other things like that. But the system that is so let's say, integrity is based on these three different terms. That is to have the safety, to keep the reliability, and to stay productive. 10 years ago, the OT systems were physically separated from the IT systems, as I said before. And so the threat environment, the threat landscape was more or less limited. So you had to have access, physical access to the OT implants, or through an USB key, like, for example, the case of Stuxnet several years ago, or through other, let's say, means to bridge the gap between the IT and OT connectivities. Nowadays, instead, the situation is completely different. But the point is that the OT components often are not even designed to handle their own safety. They accept in most of the cases and execute commands of firmware updates, even from untrusted parties. And for example, even some protocols, like for example the Modbus, are not even built using cybersecurity countermeasures. So we assist today to a convergence, not only of the technologies but also the threat landscape. So protecting critical infrastructures require information technology capabilities and operational technology expertise. So the cybersecurity approach must be omni-inclusive, or in other words, holistic. Okay. And the point is that it is interesting also that the cybersecurity countermeasures needs to be extended from the production floor up to the governance of the entire implants. For example, it is relatively famous the case of Norsk Hydro, that is a large foundry in the northern country in Sweden, if I remember correctly, or Norway. No, Norsk, so it is Norway. That was stopped. The production line was stopped after an attack of ransomware. So the decision at the governance level was taken to stop the production line using incomplete, often, data coming from the lower layers. So this is something that needs to be solved somehow, even at the level of the OT security, to include the governance and give also all the required information to take the right decision, let's say. Then I was telling that the IT and OT alignment is something that comes from many years, but got an acceleration after the surge of COVID, and I will say something about this. Looking at the Gartner hype cycle on IoT, essentially, in the 2015, the IT and OT alignment was entering in the true of disillusionment. So somehow it was in the third phase of this slope. But in the 2019, the same concept started to rise again towards the plateau of productivity. As a matter of fact, in the last hype cycle from the Internet of Things, the terminology is disappeared because it's completely outside the curve. So it is nowadays something that is completely mainstream, I would say, but it is mainstream also for the cyber criminals that are, as I said before, taking a chance to launch new attacks and to launch new threats. Somehow, let's say the OT is still what is called in cybersecurity a low-hanging fruit. So something that is relatively easy to be threatened in a way or another. The other things that is important when speaking about the cybersecurity of the OT and IT systems is that commonly the let's say what is common in the IT field is not so common in the OT area, because most of the skilled persons or skills that are relatively common, even if, as we discussed this morning, relatively rare skills are not common at all in the OT industry. So we have a very important shortage of skills able to speak the language of cybersecurity in the OT environment. But at the same time, it is also important to note that most of the OT cybersecurity products that are appearing on the market, and every day there are some new products here and there appearing on especially in the European cybersecurity market, are not that mature as their IT counterparts. So it is something that is evolving, of course. But also, since the paradigm is different, I said before, safety, reliability, and productivity, the threats are different because we can treat the system in a different way. For example, oil and gas firms targeted by the Elysium threat group. The attack relied on spear phishing, so something that starts from the IT side and ends in the OT side. And the last dropper was something that was very basic in terms of malware complexity. I just wrote some, let's say, notes in the last line of the slide telling that it was indeed very, very simple. So the threads are different. And the point is that the threads also start from the IT side and end in the IT side. So the problems of today are protect the boundaries. OT machines need to be protected because they have a long lifetime. So it is not easy. The OT in the middle is in the middle because something the companies are used, or their devices are used to attack other entities. And they are in the middle of a relatively long supply chain, usually. They also have the risk of losing the reputation towards the final client, for example, those who are selling the OT machineries, for example. And the other problems of IT today is the low maturity, as I said, of cybersecurity industry 4.0, and the evolution of the things like the International Data Space Association that is opening for the European data marketplace that is increasingly worrisome the industry. And of course, the last point is the creation of the Industry 5.0. But what changed completely is the appearance of the COVID-19, of course, because one of the things, of course, the COVID has been one of the accelerators of the digital transformation that impacted also the OT. And the explosion of work from home, for example, had an impact on the OT system in order to extremely increase the number of assets required from the remote locations. For example, increase in external connectivity that has to be added to the industrial implants, and therefore created a lot of problems and created new threats and new opportunity for attacks. So the point is that the OT implants have been caught, let's say, somehow off guard. The cybercrime, of course, is on the rise, as I said before, because when people are working from remotely, the point is that poorly connected small entity and easily attackable individuals have merged. And the point is that attacking a big company, attacking an industrial system, or attacking a small company is somehow more or less the same thing for a cyber criminal. Because most of the time, the people that are working in those organizations are working at homes, and they are left alone most of the times without much protection. So let's say they don't have the same type of support while they are inside the demilitarized zone of the company. So the point is that the need is to reconcile IT and OT cybersecurity, and we need to do that in many ways. First of all, as I said before, we need a sort of holistic process that includes cybersecurity, physical security, and cyber-physical security. There are all three aspects of threats that can be used against an OT implant. And also to include the governance model, because it must be the same to span across the IT and OT systems and IT and OT domains, because as I said, most of the threats are starting in the IT world and ending into the OT domain. For example, some peculiarities. Many people speak about the security of IoT, so Internet of Things. But there is another type of things that is the industrial IoT, which has different type of devices with different. They are built, of course, using the different paradigm. They are built on safety, reliability, and productivity. So they have to be completely different type of project criteria. And then we need for the reconciliation of these two words. What I am proposing and what we are investigating as Chefriel is actually the sort of omni-inclusive model that spans through 15 layers of cybersecurity. As you can see, probably, well, this is readable from the geographical area, because it's when you are speaking about OT, it also is important where your machinery is installed. Where is the production floor? If it is in a nation or which is under political tension, or in another one. So starting from the geographical layer up to the government layer. And as I underline here, only some of these layers are usually target of cyberspace, are living in the cyberspace. But the point is that every one of these, when we combine cybersecurity, cyber safety, cyber physical security, all of these layers becomes important and influence each other. For example, even in terms of threats, a small, relatively, let's say, undetectable delay of data flowing from an industrial IoT to a control floor of an industry, in the IT, information technology world, this wouldn't be a problem. In the OT world, this could be a problem because it delays the control of the anomalies and could create even some problems leading, for example, to an explosion or something else. So the point is that the tactics, threats, and procedures of cyber criminals are evolving, and we need to have a common, let's say, hierarchical infrastructure to do a vulnerability assessment that covers everything. What we are doing, and I'm going to finish my speech, is that even as Jeffrey, we are slowly populating this relatively long stack through some research projects. Like, for example, I just put the names. The hermeneutic is something about the calculation of the risks of falling in specific attack tactics. So it's a sort of risk calculation engine that assigns the likelihood of being attacked to the different assets of a company. The Dogana project, of which I made a talk 2 years ago at this conference, was about the vulnerability assessment of the human layer. So doing what is now the mainstream, but at the time wasn't. The performing of simulated phishing campaigns and calculating the risk of the human layer. That is important, not only sending phishing emails to, let's say, to unconscious victims. And then the other points on which we are working is also the cyber risk estimation specific for the OT assets, and the execution of full spectrum vulnerability assessment or integrated vulnerability assessment. There is an extension of the vulnerability assessment that also includes the presence of OT devices or of the industrial IoT devices. So this was more or less the conclusion, and I just took 19 minutes, so I hope to be in time, and this is my last slide.